Hello everybody. Today we're going to find the slope from 2 points written down. Now first let me say that find the slope from a graph and find the slope from 2 points written down are pretty much the same thing, just different ways of doing it. But you could always go back and forth between the two methods. So for example, you could take 2 points on a graph and then use the slope formula to find the slope like we're going to do right now. Or you could take 2 points written down, graph them, and then use a right triangle to find the change in y over the change in x. So find the slope between 2 points written down and find the slope between 2 points from a graph are interchangeable methods. But I'm going to show you how to find the slope from 2 points written down right now. So the formula that you're going to use is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So that's the slope formula, it's called. And this is the formula you use to find the slope from 2 points. Okay? So you're going to subtract your y values and divide that by your x value subtracted. Okay? Now let's utilize it. And even though it's a pretty easy formula to use, oftentimes we do see mistakes with students in different aspects. So let me show you what I mean. So let's say we have the 2 points, -3, 4, and 6, 1. And we're asked to find the slope between those 2 points. One way we can do that is by using the slope formula. So we're going to copy down the slope formula. Okay, now, what I recommend you do is write down the slope formula and just put a fraction and put minus signs in your formula. Because oftentimes, a mistake I commonly see is students, if they have a lot of negative signs in their work, they'll forget about the minus signs for the actual problem. So I write my fraction and put the minus signs in there. Now, what you need to do to use this formula successfully is label your points. So one of your points is going to be x1, y1. The other point is going to be x2, y2. Remember, with an ordered pair, your first value is your x coordinate, and then your second value, when I line in red, those are your y coordinates. So I labeled the first point x1, y1. I labeled the second point x2, y2. Now, we could have switched that. So I could have, if I wanted to, labeled this one x2, y2. And I could have labeled the second one x1, y1 if we wanted to. So that does not matter. But one point has to get ones, one point has to get twos, and it has to be x, y. So now that I labeled the points, now I'll just plug them in. So we have my y2, which is 1, minus my y1, which is 4. That's divided by our x2, which is 6, minus our x1, which is -3. And that's why I recommend that you write these minus signs down right away. That way you don't forget one here. And now we do our subtraction. So in the numerator, we have 1 minus 4. I'm going to continue down here. 1 minus 4, which is -3. In the denominator, we have 6 minus a -3. You guys remember with subtraction that if we have minus a negative number, we add the opposite for that. So these two negative signs actually become a positive, and 6 plus 3 is actually 9. Once we do our math for our final answer, we want to make sure we simplify that. I'm just actually going to go to the left here. 3 over 9 simplifies to 1/3, so our final answer is -1/3. Okay? Now, I'm not going to do this for every problem, but I want to show you that in case you forget a method. We could easily take these 2 points and graph them and find the slope using the graph. So I'm going to do that right now. So there's our 2 points from the problem we just did. Let's graph them. So we have -3, 4, which is right there. And then we also have from the origin 6, go to the right, up 1. Okay, so there's our 2 points. We're going to connect them to form our line. And again, assume that's a perfectly straight line. But now we're going to make our right triangle. And our change in y is up and down. Our change in x is left to right. If you look at this line, it falls from left to right. So therefore, we know our slope is negative. And now let's count the spots for each one. Change in y is 3. Change in x, I'm just drawing a line there so you can count them better. looks like there's actually 9. So we have 3 over 9, which reduces, actually that was my negative sign, so let me go back for 1 second. We did say it was negative. But we have 3 over 9, and if I reduce that, we get negative 1/3. So notice we got the same exact answer by graphing the 2 points and finding the slope that way. So graphing the points and finding the slope and the slope formula are interchangeable methods. Now, for the rest of the video lesson, I'm going to use the slope formula, but I just wanted you to know that if you forget how to use the slope formula or if you want to check your answer, you could always graph the points and find your slope that way. Okay, so let's say we have the points 5, -2, and then -2, -8. So I already wrote down the slope formula here. So we're going to label the points. Most people do x1, y1 first, x2, y2, or you could switch those if you wanted to. But always label your points so you don't make a careless mistake plugging them in. Because when people look at 4 numbers at once, it's very easy to just mix them up. So now I'm going to write down the slope formula with the numerator denominator and write down my minus signs. That's the recommendation I make. And now I'll plug in the numbers. So we have -8 as our y2. Our y1 is -2, so minus -2. The minus sign was already there. And then for our denominator, we subtract our x's. -2 minus +5. And the +5 was the x1. Now we do our math. So I'm going to rewrite the m. I'm in the numerator. These 2 negative signs make a positive, so it actually becomes -8 plus 2 because we're adding the opposite. Okay? Then we still had -2 minus 5. So in the numerator, we get -6. In the denominator, -2 minus 5 is -7. Now notice that the numerator and denominator are both negative. When that happens, your final answer is a positive. So I reduce it, and that reduces to a positive 6 over 7. Okay? So remember, when you're doing slope, if your numerator and denominator are both negative, that becomes a positive final answer, like we have over here. If the numerator or the denominator is negative, meaning only one of them is negative, then your final answer, or the overall fraction, is negative. Okay? So again, if the numerator or the denominator is negative, it makes your final answer negative. But if they're both negative, that will simplify to a positive. Can't stress enough, always simplify your fractions when you're finding the slope. Okay? We always simplify our fractions in lowest terms in mathematics, so always simplify your final answer. So let's do another one. We have -4, 6 and -4, 10. I want to find the slope between those 2 points using our slope formula. So label the points so we don't make a simple mistake. Write your fractions, putting a minus sign in the numerator and denominator. And now you plug in your numbers. My y2 is 10. Y1 is 6. X2 is -4. And minus our x1, which is also -4. So now we do our math. 10 minus 6 is 4. And then -4 minus a -4. These 2 negative signs add the opposite, become a positive. So that actually becomes -4 plus 4, which is 0. So we have -4 divided by 0. Well, you guys should remember this has occurred a lot throughout the year. We can't divide by 0 in mathematics. We just can't. So when you get 0 in the denominator, when you're finding the slope, that's a final answer of undefined. Okay? And what that actually means is that we can't determine the slope. I ran out of space there. We can't, let me rewrite that. But we can't determine the slope. Okay? So when you're finding the slope, when you're calculating slope, if 0 is in a denominator, your final answer, and you got to write this, is undefined. And what that actually means, by the way, about this line is that it's a vertical line. Because vertical lines have undefined slopes. And if you graph those 2 points, they would connect in a vertical line. So the final answer was undefined for the last problem. Okay, our last problem, we're going to have 3, -6, and then 7, -6. and we're going to find the slope between these 2 points. Now, for this problem, it looks like the y values are the same, actually. If you remember the last problem, the x values were the same. But let's label everything anyways and plug it in. Some of you might see kind of already what might happen. So we'll plug everything in. So I'll rewrite my problem, make a fraction, put minus signs in there. So our y2 is -6, but our y1 is also -6. Then our x2 is 7 divided by our x1, which is +3. Now we do our math. In the numerator, -6 minus a -6, add the opposite. These become positive. That'll be 0. It really doesn't matter what the denominator is at this point, but unless it would be 0. But 7 minus 3 is 4. And with this problem, you can take 0 and divide it by any number. In mathematics, that's always 0. And what that actually means is that this is a horizontal line. So anytime you get a slope of 0, that means that these points would connect to form a horizontal line. And horizontal lines always have a slope of 0. So hopefully you found this video lesson helpful regarding finding slope using the slope formula. Okay. And I'll add a little bonus feature here really quick. So for the bonus feature here, I'm going to show you something. Now we could actually write down what these 2 points are. Like this first one here that'd be 2, 3. This one right here would be 2, 3. And we could easily write down what both these points are, but I'm going to write them in a different way. So let me clear that off. So let's say I label this first point x1, y1, like we do when we label 2 points written down. Let's say I label this second point x2, y2. Well, if we draw a right triangle between these 2 points, we would subtract the y values, right? Because that would be the change in y. So we would do y2 minus y1. Now we don't know what those are. Well, we actually do know what they are in this case, but let's say we did not know what those points were that were graphed. So we have y2 minus y1. And then for our change in x over here, we would subtract the x's. So we get x2, because that would be the same x value for this point, x2 minus x1. So one of the ways that the slope formula is derived is actually just from the graph. So I wanted to show you that really quick. There's another way it's derived as well, but that's where it kind of comes from. So that was a little bonus. But guys, let me know what you think in this video in the comments below. Have a fantastic day.